in one coalition or another, and he is an aging leader. So is Bihar looking at the next generation? Talking about the next generation, there's a challenger who is young, dynamic, and has managed to capture the imagination of the youth, but he's still struggling to expand his appeal beyond the traditional constituencies of Muslims and Yadavs. Who has the edge in Bihar, and what are the X factors? We'll get to that in just 1 second, but there are two critical constituencies who will decide who wins this big battle for Bihar in 2025. And those two constituencies are: one, women, who played a huge role in the 2020 election. They were the difference between the NDA winning and edging out the Mahagathbandhan. And two, the second big constituency is going to be that of youth, in a state where almost 40% of the electorate is between the age of 18 and 35. But first, today campaigning ended for the first phase of elections. It's going to happen day after tomorrow on the 6th, where 121 seats will go to polls. We'll break down which of those seats are important, what are the critical factors on the magic wall. But let's first play out some reactions that came through on the very last day of campaigning for the first phase of the big battle for Bihar.
आप बताइए बहन जी हमको कि आपको महिला रोजगार योजना के तहत 10-10 हजार रुपए मिला कि नहीं मिला? मिला कि नहीं मिला? और अभी इसके बाद, चुनाव के बाद 2 लाख रुपए आपके खाते में आएगा, ताकि आप स्वरोजगार के साथ अपने आप को जोड़ पाएंगे।
जिसको हमने बिहार विधानसभा में भी सरकार से कई बार हम लोगों ने मांग की, ओपीएस, ओल्ड पेंशन स्कीम, हमारी सरकार बनेगी तो ओल्ड पेंशन स्कीम जो है लागू किया जाएगा।
All right, so what are the big X factors as far as Bihar is concerned? There are 5 big X factors. Number one, as is the case with any election, state or national, anti-incumbency happens to be a big one. Nitish Kumar, remember, has been in the Chief Minister's chair for 20 years straight now, from 2005 all the way to 2025. He's been with different coalitions, sometimes with the NDA, sometimes with the Gathbandhan. Right now, for the last almost 2 years now, he has been with the NDA. This is an election where it will be a test of whether Nitish Kumar continues to be as popular as he has been in these last 20 years, and whether or not the BJP can help him tide over the anti-incumbency of the last 5 years. Number two, and this is a critical constituency, this is what saved the day really for the NDA last time around, women voters once again holding the balance of power. For the last 2 decades, Nitish Kumar has built his entire politics around women voters, women Labhartis. He's given them laptops and cycles. And of course, the big one this time around, the 10,000 rupees for all women in the state who are underprivileged. That's 1.2, 1.3 crore women. And now the Mahagathbandhan is also trying to woo them, the Jivika Didis, with a 30,000 monthly stipend for them. And then there is, of course, the SIR exercise, the special intensive revision of the electoral rolls that happened over the last few months. 68.5 lakh voters' names have been deleted. It's spread in almost a secular fashion across the state between north, south, east and west. But who will this hurt? Whose voters have been deleted more? That again is a big question mark. And then the NDA and the Prime Minister leading the charge on this. The NDA has put the spotlight on the jungle Raj of the RJD, the period when Lalu Yadav and his wife Rabri Devi were in power between 1990 and 2005. This is a legacy. Whether or not Tejasvi Yadav will be able to overcome that, we will have to wait and see. And then now you have the JDU too, and a big Bahubali of the JDU, Anand Singh, being put behind bars in a murder case. Does this sting both ways? And the fifth and final factor, and no one quite knows how this is going to play out because it's a new factor, and that is the PK factor, the Jan Suraj party that he has launched. He's drawing big crowds wherever he goes, particularly with the youth. Will it translate into votes? In every interview, including to CNN News 18, he says he'll either get 10 seats or he'll get 100 seats. But, you know, that's not the way elections work. So will his appeal, his ability to draw crowds, his appeal amongst the youth, will that translate to votes? These are the 5 big X factors that we've broken down for you. which will basically decide which way this big battle for Bihar will go. But let me also play more political reactions, and then we'll break down those two specific factors. We'll look at these 121 seats that are going to polls tomorrow, on Thursday, and also the women voter and the SIR impact right in just a moment.
जंगल राज और गुंडा राज ये आरजेडी और कांग्रेस की पहचान है, इनकी खानदानी पहचान है। ये जिन लोगों ने बिहार को लूटा, जो खानदानी लुटेरे हैं, आज वे खानदानी माफिया को शागिर्द बना करके फिर से बिहार में जंगल राज लाना चाहते हैं।
बिहार के बेरोजगार नौजवान भाइयों का समर्थन तेजस्वी को बहुत मिल रहा है, महागठबंधन के जहां भी उम्मीदवार खड़े हैं, क्योंकि हम मुद्दे को लेकर चुनाव में जा रहे हैं। हम उनकी बात कर रहे हैं, हम युवाओं की बात कर रहे हैं, हम महिलाओं की बात कर रहे हैं, चाहे वो महंगाई की बात हो और चाहे नौकरी और रोजगार की बात हो।
All right, so let's break down these three factors. Which are the seats that are going to polls tomorrow, the women factor, and of course the SIR, if it will have any impact at all in the state of Bihar. Here's the magic wall, the most explanatory tool, data tool that you will find on television. Let's first look at the phase 1 seats. Now, it's interesting, it's different from last time around. There's no geographical divide. Last time around, the first phase was the southern seats, the second phase was the central seats, and the third phase was the northern seats. This time around, it's a mix. So you have sort of seats that are there in the central part of Bihar. Essentially, you're looking at seats that are starting off from this southern side. You have the Buxar, Bhojpur belt. You also have some parts of Mithilanchal in the central part of the state, which are voting tomorrow on Thursday. Places like Samastipur, Vaishali, Darbhanga, some of those constituencies. Now, remember, the phase 1 is a tricky phase because last time around, it's actually the Mahagathbandhan which had a slight edge. 61 out of these 121, the Gathbandhan won. The NDA managed to win only 59. So these are the seats that will be polling on Thursday. But if you were to look at a breakup of where the Mahagathbandhan won or which of the parties in the Mahagathbandhan won, it is actually the RJD that won substantially. Out of the 61, 42 of those seats were won by the RJD. So almost 2/3 of these seats were won by the RJD. The Congress had only 8. The CPI-ML had 7. The CPI and the CPM had 2 each. Let's go back and check on the Mahagathbandhan. Where did they win, or which of those parties won? If you look at the phase 1 seats, the 121 seats going to polls on Thursday, look at the NDA. There again, the JDU was the laggard. The JDU, even though it was a senior partner in the state, the JDU won only 23 seats. The BJP won 32, even though the vote share was almost similar, 17.2 for BJP and 17.1 for the JDU. In all, it was the BJP that went ahead and the JDU was the laggard as far as this phase is concerned, which is why the NDA had a narrow victory, as it were, in the 2020 election. Now, 2 critical factors. We mentioned that X factor there on our 3D graphics as well. But let's just break this down. Women voters, they were the critical difference last time around between the NDA and the MGB. In fact, in the entire state, across the state, all 243 constituencies, women led men by almost 5 percentage points. More women voted than men by 5 percentage points across the state. But we looked at what about those constituencies where women were decisive by more than 10%, which means for every 10 men, there were 11 women voting. There, if you look at it, again, it's spread largely in the northern part of the state. Some of these seats go to polls tomorrow in the Mithilanchal region, in the western region. Also, a lot of seats in Simanchal, which of course go to polls in the second phase, which is on the 11th. But out of these 71 seats, look at this, the NDA had a more than 2:1 lead. 46 of those 71 seats were won by the NDA, the Mahagathbandhan managing to win just 20 seats, which is why I keep saying women are going to be one of the decisive factors in this election simply because they are also caste agnostic. They are not divided as Yadav women vote only for Yadavs, or Muslim women only vote for the Gathbandhan, or Hindu upper caste women only vote for the NDA. They do not vote on the basis of caste lines, much like men do. So the women voter was the critical difference that happened in the last election in 2020. This election, Another critical factor, which at least the opposition claims is going to be a critical one, they made a lot of noise around it, especially in the run-up to the campaigning happening, and that is the special intensive revision that the Election Commission undertook of electoral rolls. There again, there are about 106 constituencies, almost half the state, where this SIR exercise was critical. Remember, the total number of people who've been deleted from the rolls is close to about 68.5, 69 lakhs. That's about 7% of the total electors, which is 7.4 crores. Out of that, in these 106 constituencies, again, it's spread across various regions. There are seats in Simanchal, there are seats in some parts of Mithilanchal, there are a lot of seats in the northwestern part of Bihar as well, where the average deletions were in excess of the 7%, which is the state average. 7% is the total number of deletions across the state. These are the 106 constituencies where there was more than state average, 8%, 9%, 10% or more in these 106 constituencies where the SIR impact will be felt. So these two critical factors, having laid this out on the table, let's go out and ask our experts on what this means for both the main coalitions, the NDA, which is the ruling coalition, and of course the Mahagathbandhan or the India Alliance. Rajat Sethi is joining us, political analyst. Rashid Kidwai, senior journalist, also joining us. Rajat, let me start with you first. The two factors that I outlined, women voters, which swung it for the NDA last time around, and the second one, the SIR impact. Which way do you think both of this will play out in 2025?
So Zaka, SIR is a non-issue primarily because anybody who's voting is not getting impacted by SIR, because by the very nature that he has his vote and he or she is going out and voting, that SIR doesn't register into his or her psyche at all. So I don't see ab initio SIR being an issue. But the big, broad brush on this electoral canvas that has been painted by the NDA is the cash transfer. 10,000 rupees of cash transfer is a very big amount. I mean, I'm hearing families, they say that ladki ka ghar mein tilak ho jata hai 10,000 rupees mein. You can get your daughter married also in amounts which are 10,000 amount. It might appear a big amount. It might appear a small amount from Delhi circles and from other circles. But from a Bihar standpoint, this is a major sort of an intervention that the government has done. It is going to have a cross-caste impact, and therefore this is a very big broad brush stroke on the canvas. And see, I don't expect, say, the Yadav women to come out and vote en masse for NDA, but even a chipping away of 1 or 2% here and there is good enough to consolidate the woman lead that NDA historically has had over the previous elections also. That lead has always been 3 to 5%, and if 2% more gets added to it, you will start seeing surprising results similar to the scale of Maharashtra. Okay. There was intense caste battle that was happening in that state because of reservation demand, OBC, Maratha reservation. Everybody started deep diving into those caste issues. But look at the end result. The end result came out as if there was nothing, none of these micro analysis that analysts like us were trying to do, because that broad brush overtook every other narrative that was there.
No, which is why I said women are a caste agnostic vote
You're
bank.
Absolutely. So this is why I'm saying this is such a encompassing factor that it takes care of certain anti-incumbency which might be built in, or certain wrong ticket distribution which might go here and there. Otherwise, NDA, I believe, has done a decent job in terms of balancing out various Dalits, Mahadalits, and keep it in mind that the Mahadalit vote is the only vote which can swing a little bit here and there, and if it goes into the NDA favor, you will see surprising results going into the NDA.
So Rashid Kidwai, so we've seen this in Maharashtra with Ladki Behan, we saw this in Madhya Pradesh with Ladli Behan. Everywhere, even in opposition ruled states, Congress won a large part in large part in Karnataka because of the Mahalakshmi scheme. In Telangana, the same thing, free bus rides for women and so on and so forth. Now, this seems to be a game changer across states. The NDA clearly had a lead on this, not just with the 10,000 rupee, but Nitish Kumar's sort of claim to fame in 2010 when the first re-election that he won was because he was giving cycles to high school girls. Today, those high school girls are voters. They're in their middle age, right? And they remember these things. So my point is, when Tejaswi Yadav, at the end of campaigning comes and says, oh, we'll also give 30,000 rupees to Jivika Didis, forget about the math of it, whether the economics adds up or not. the fact still remains that there is one, which is the coalition that the women constituency trusts more, which is the coalition that has delivered, and therefore you tend to buy their promises a little more. That is one factor. And the second factor is, as I explained, just 5 years ago, the women vote was the critical difference. In 71 constituencies, there was one extra woman voter for every 10 male voters. And that's what clinched it essentially for the NDA.
So, Zaka, we have had, mixed kind of thing about when we talk about this populist schemes making an impact. You look at YSR Congress in Andhra. You look at Naveen Patnaik, a lot of populist schemes in Odisha. You see Ashok Gehlot in Rajasthan. So it didn't work. But in many cases that you are citing, of course, it worked. So it depends upon the trust value, whether Mr. Nitish Kumar is in a position to get another term. Remember, he's old, he's aging, age is not in his side. There are a lot of things are being talked about. So if the voter disregards all these factors and vote for that coalition, then of course the BJP NDA will be in. But I think there are a lot of challenges. We are actually simplifying it, in the sense that we think that the women would always be, moved by this 10,000 extra rupees that they're getting. Women are, they are thinking entities. They have a political view, and in many places they have they are youth. They are looking for job. They have aspirations. So Jan Swaraj is an option. Tejasvi is an option, and of course the NDA BJP is an option. To look at the woman as a kind of composite vote bank or a vote block, I think we are reading too much into it.
So I want to come to that second constituency, the youth vote, as it were, because there are multiple sort of claimants to the youth vote, multiple people who are trying to appeal to the youth vote. Here again, Rajat, there are 75, as per 2011 census, there are 75 lakh migrant workers out of Bihar, which basically means this is a constituency that Tejasvi Yadav is trying to cater to, Mr. Prashant Kishore of Jan Swaraj is trying to cater to. Ultimately, there is a problem of migration from Bihar. As Prashant Kishore says, if there is, jobs in Bihar, why would people migrate? People will not migrate if there are jobs in Bihar. Has the NDA, not delivered sufficiently on the question of jobs to young people? And Nitish Kumar has been, like I said, in power for the last 20 years, either in this coalition or that coalition. Is this his Achilles heel?
See, in order for any election for that matter, when you have to come out and say that this is a core issue and I will, rally and compound my attacks on the government in a way that the government will look for answers and will not be able to answer. Had you built that narrative, had you built the momentum around that core issue, then we would have seen similar sort of feedback from the ground, etc. See, the overall election is largely flat. The kind of anti-incumbency issues, including the issues of not creating enough industries in the state, was not created to a level. Instead, the NDA, look at what NDA has been doing. They have been, doing a cut, copy, paste of similar issues and bringing it to the current election cycle and still being able to successfully launch an attack and corner the government, so much so that very well knowing that Tejasvi will be attacked on this issue. Now Congress is facing that I don't have anything to do with Jungle Raj and I'm still getting pulled into that narrative. They are not able to come out of it. Tejasvi doesn't have an answer. He cannot look eye and eye in the camera and come out and conclusively say that either his family has to be attributed to the Jungle Raj or not. Or what is his response? So this issue or this lack of communication and narrative building, that they could have launched a scathing attack on the sitting government. Okay. They have lost this opportunity yet again. So, and I believe going forward also, if they do not address the elephant in the room, Tejasvi will not be able to come out of that mold. He cannot, just sit on a very, very, vocal Yadav and a Muslim vote and try and say that this combination alone is going to instill confidence among the EBCs and the Mahadalits and the Dalits to be able to pay him over from the
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, it's a bit like what Akhilesh tried to do, and I guess with some relative success in the Lok Sabha election 2024, expand beyond MY and become this PD. He came up with this coinage of PDA. Whether Tejasvi can do the same in Bihar, we'll wait and see. But Rashid, the other problem for the opposition was the issues that they picked up in the run-up to this election, in which they made a huge song and dance about SIR, vote chori. They themselves are not talking about as much now. they have now pivoted to young people, jobs, even crime. You know, I heard an opposition leader the other day talking about rising crime graph in Bihar and so on and so forth. Did they pick the wrong issues in the run-up to this election?
Not really. I think, Zaka, we must look at that SIR issue, that denial of voting rights to a large number of people who, in fact, going by electoral rolls, had voted in the Lok Sabha election of 2024 was actually a matter of grave concern for every citizen. It's about democratic participation or denial of democratic participation. So I think opposition has done enough to rake up that, and it is for a large number of thinking people who are not politically aligned to ponder over it and decide. It may not be a turning point, but it's just like saying that the farmer society is not an issue. A farmer society is a major issue, and it deals with a lot of sensitivity that political parties and leaders need to display. So I think opposition has done enough. Whether it will translate into votes or not, one can say that denial of or removal of so many lack of voters would, of course, is a disadvantage to Mahagathbandhan, because many of these voters are poorest of the poor who have not been included. So therefore, but that doesn't mean the opposition has picked a wrong issue.
Okay,
we'll tell.
We'll see. We'll see on the 14th. We will know which of these two issues had resonance or did not have resonance on the ground in Bihar. Thank you very much, Rashid Gidwai and Rajat Sethi, for joining us. They'll of course be with us through the course of this election, end of this election campaign. Voting first phase is on Thursday on the 6th, 121 constituencies then. And then, of course, on the 11th, the 122 constituencies. We'll have an exit poll this time, starting 6 p.m. on the 11th. It's the News 18 Mega Bihar exit poll. We'll have our coverage at 6 p.m. on the 11th, so do join us for that. I want to now move on to the other big story. Bihar is barely done or barely begun voting, but we're already talking about the states that are to come next. The Election Commission today launched its special intensive revision of voter rolls across 12 states, including the upcoming poll-bound states of Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, etc. In Bengal, the TMC took out a march against the exercise, accusing the centre of targeting opposition strongholds under the guise of voter verification. TMC MP Abhishek Banerjee claimed that 7 people have died because of SIR and because of what they call the fears of a backdoor entry of NRC. Meanwhile, the BJP has petitioned the Election Commission over alleged irregularities in West Bengal voter registrations. They're demanding more strict scrutiny of documents issued under the Mamta Banerjee administration. But the exercise will continue even amidst the din of politics. In fact, the Tamil Nadu ruling party, the DMK they're appealing to the Supreme Court. Tomorrow, there's going to be an all-party meeting in Kerala. So all of these opposition-ruled states are once again upping the ante as far as the SIR exercise is concerned. But are they barking up the wrong tree? Let's play out some reactions and then we'll go to our political guests as well.
3 মাসের মধ্যে তুমি বাড়ি বাড়ি গিয়ে 10 কোটি লোক তার ফর্ম ফিল আপ করে সব হবে? যে কাজটা 2.5 বছর 3 বছর লাগে, লোকের ধৈর্যের বাঁধ ভাঙবে না? মির্জাফর বাবু, আসাম কেন হলো না? হলে হারতেন। আসামের লোকে ভোট দিত না, ফলস ভোটে যেতেন। আমি চ্যালেঞ্জ নিয়ে বলে যাচ্ছি, ইলেকশন বাউন্ড 4টে রাজ্য, 3টে অপোজিশন রুল স্টেটে আপনি এসআইআর করলেন, কিন্তু আপনি নিজের ডাবল ইঞ্জিন সরকার, চোরদের সরকারেরটা করলেন না।
আগামী দিন তৃণমূল কংগ্রেস দিল্লি যাবে এবং এসআইআর এর প্রতিবাদে বাংলার ক্ষমতা কি সারা ভারতবর্ষকে দেখাবে। দিল্লি যাওয়ার জন্য প্রস্তুত থাকুন।
All right, they're threatening to hit the streets, Mamta Banerjee and Abhishek Banerjee. Let me go across to a straight face-off on this. Tuin Sinha is national spokesperson of the BJP. Tausif Rahman is spokesperson of the TMC. Tuin, even in Bihar, what the opposition is saying is that, look, almost 68, 69 lakh voters have been removed from the voter list. The Election Commission says a large number of them are dead or they've moved out of Bihar. But at the end of the day, the opposition's contention is a bulk of them are poor voters, they are scheduled caste, scheduled tribe voters, voters who may not have access to the documents. Ultimately, even the Election Commission had to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that, look, accept Aadhaar as one of the documents. Today, Mamta Banerjee and Abhishek Banerjee are saying we will not cooperate in this exercise. We will hit the streets, as they have in Kolkata today.
Good evening, Zaka. Good evening, everybody. From 2001, the population of Bengal has grown by 31%, but the total voters has grown by 67%. So there are 36%, there is a 36% extra growth in the number of voters, which simply can't be explained, which simply can't be, legitimate voters. So SIR is a necessary today, not just in Bengal, but in several other parts of the country, which is why the Honorable Supreme Court validated it. Now, of course, there are checks and balances which the Supreme Court has put in place. A comprehensive list of documents for the SIR, which begins today, has already been provided. But Mamata Banerjee is a habitual anarchist. Whether it was the Waqf Amendment Act where she tried to stoke problem, whether it was CAA, or this is the third time she is trying to stoke problems, she cannot live without violence. And therefore, on your show today, let me give this assurance to the country that whether it is Mamata Banerjee, Abhishek Banerjee, or the entire TMC, they will not be able to stop SIR. They will not be able to stoke violence this time. In fact, 100 illegal Bangladeshis have been caught in the border in the last 3 days because they were trying to escape to Bangladesh.
Tausif Rahman, SIR, this is not the first time that an SIR exercise is happening. 8 times since independence, SIR has happened, and including in the latest Bihar example, a bulk of those who've been removed from the electoral rolls are either dead, duplicate, or migrated voters. Why should there not be an exercise to clean up the electoral rolls every now and then?
Good evening, Zaka. Zaka, in the 7 days since the BJP affiliated body and the Election Commission of India announced the SIR, we have lost many citizens. Pradeep Kaur, Kshitish Majumdar, Kakuli Sarkar, Vishal Chantra, Hasina Begum, Sheikh Sirajuddin, Bashir Mul. So now will you send the Human Rights, Women Commission and all those government body which has been compromised with Modi government? I mean, see, from today's protest, let me be very clear, Zaka. From today's protest, TMC is very clear about the steps which will be taken in future. Now take it as a threat, dhamki or chunauti. And let me start with what Abhishek Banerjee said today from the protest. On the holy land of Thakurbari, I, Abhishek Banerjee, promise that those who have insulted Bengal and deprived us from Manrega, Jal Jeevan Mission, PM Awas, Gram Sadak Yojana, Sarva Shiksha Mission, and acting unilaterally treating us like a remote control toy, we will answer them in 2026 assembly election. You are absolutely right that this is not the first time SIR is happening, but such kind of SIR is becoming like a threat. आप धमकी दे रहे हैं लोगों को. What is your intention and what is the intention of timing? Those who ask us to produce papers should first show their fathers and grandfathers' papers, Zaka, and then ask for ours. This land is as much mine as yours.
No, but tell me, Mr. Tausif, in the Bihar instance, all political parties went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, no less, said that it's a constitutional procedure, and even the Supreme Court cannot ask the Election Commission not to undertake an SIR. You can have, issues or differences, opposition to the manner in which the SIR is taking place. But to say that we will not show our papers and we should not have an SIR exercise, that just, begets logic.
Okay, then why don't you start the SIR with Assam, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Tripura? If you are so much concerned with the Bangladeshis, Rohingyas, as you claim that there are 1 crore of Rohingyas staying in Bengal, then why don't you start with Assam, Tripura, Nagaland? Because there are the same states which is sharing borders with Bangladesh. Even West Bengal doesn't share a border with Myanmar. So what is the intention behind it? So you see, this whole thing is a facade. It's nothing but a gimmick. So we respect the Supreme Court. We cannot go beyond the Supreme Court, of course. But you take it as a threat. If one legitimate vote or a person name has been cut from the electoral list, you will see 1 lakh people standing in Delhi outside the Election Commission. And that's a challenge.
He's saying it's openly a threat. If 1 voter is removed, then 1 lakh people will stay outside the ECI.
This is the language of Hussain Sohrawardy and Maulana Bhashani. This is not the basic Bhasha now.
One at a time.
Have the basic courtesy.
One at a time, yeah.
If you can't speak the language of an Indian Democrat, I will have to point out that this language does not behove any responsible democratic party. 1 lakh people sending them to Bengal as if there is a huge difference between Bengal and India. This is the mentality of these people. Zaka, did you see what are the excuses they are making? Why now? Why not Tripura first? Look at the threat they are giving. If one right person is taken out from the roll, they are okay with 36% illegal voters being there. but their only concern is stoking up this hysteria, stoking up this drama that we are weeding out genuine voters. Can you explain how is the rise in voters, total voters, 36% more than the total increase in population in the last 24 years?
No, but Tuhin, what about the question he asked? Why
just,
not in Assam? Why not in Nagaland, in Meghalaya? They all share a border with Bangladesh.
That is the prerogative of the election commission. To let them take it up again with the Supreme Court, and let Supreme Court tell them, please don't do the task of the election commission. The election commission has the full prerogative. They chose 12 states. They did not only pick up Bengal. If 10 other states don't have a problem, Tamil Nadu and Bengal cannot have a specific problem with timing.
Okay.
Please understand, just one second. Mamta Banerjee in 2006, when she was a minister in UPA, had been equally vocal against illegal migrants. Today, she is defending the same. She has blood in her hands because the killings which took place in Murshidabad could have been provided had she not stoked up hysteria around the Waqf Amendment Act.
At the end of the day, this is an exercise to clean up the electoral rolls. It's an exercise to improve transparency, trust in the electoral process, whether it is through house-to-house verification, involvement of BLOs, the booth-level officers, whether it is claims and counterclaims, objection mechanisms. In the Bihar instance, the Supreme Court itself asked, why is not even one political party helping any voter who has been deleted in this 68 or 69 lakh, who is a genuine voter whose name has been deleted? Why has that not been raised with the Election Commission? And none of them had any answers.
So, Zaka, I have a simple question once again. So, if Mr. Tuhin thinks that there is a percentage of Bangladesh and Rohingya staying in Bengal, so will he give us the assurance that there is not even 1% of Bangladeshis staying in Assam? Now, will you throw this ball outside the court of ECI that अब तो ये ECI समझेगा? So, कल ECI बोलेगा मैं लहंगा पहन के नाचू वोटर ID हाथ में लेके, so we will dance with the lehenga? No, we will not do. The question is, what exactly is the ECI intention? If the stated purpose of the SIR is to stop illegal infiltration, then the process must begin at the border. That is where it should be checked. If a Rohingya were to reach Bengal, they would have to pass through one of these 4 border states first. Then why have these states have been exempted from SIR? Bangladesh and Myanmar together share border with 8 Indian states. Yet the SIR has been conducted only in Bengal. Why this selective targeting? अरे आप जो बोलोगे और हम बंदर की तरह नाचेंगे ऐसा तो नहीं होगा ज़ाका.
No, but in the case of Assam, one second. In the case of Assam, the Chief Election Commissioner was asked this question and he said there's already an NRC exercise there. We don't want to duplicate it. That's what he said.
That NRC exercise is totally flop. How many Hindus have been barred from there? The Hindus are suffering in Assam more than Muslims. So I don't understand, if they are not prepared to do anything, why are they doing?
Okay.
बस आपको इशारों में नाचना है.
So, Tuhin, even in Bihar, the question was asked to the Election Commission, how many illegals, how many foreigners did you remove? They haven't given a figure.
Well, in all, 68 lakh illegal voters have been removed. Now it is for the local agencies, the local police, to figure out how many of them are illegal voters. That's a process which is underway. But what is this logic? Why Bengal first? Does Uttar Pradesh share a border with Bangladesh? Does Uttar Pradesh share a border with Myanmar? Does Kerala share a border with these? I mean, they are running out of logic. They are just bringing up some farcical excuse or the other, and then they will threaten that 1 lakh people will come to Delhi. Wait, I mean, we'll embrace them with open arms. Let's see how many people you're able to bring to Delhi.
No, but Mr. Tausif, this is also a question to be asked. I mean, you're a democratic party. You can make SIR into the biggest issue in the Bengal election, but this kind of a threat, saying, even if one voter is deleted, we'll bring 1 lakh people and agitate outside the Election Commission. I mean, political parties don't make threats in a democracy. Come on.
I Zaka, on a national television where I am talking with Zaka and CNN News 18, I say once again, my National General Secretary and the Daiban Harbour MP Abhishek Banerjee is absolutely clear, and we support that. We will go Delhi if it's necessary. I mean, you see, and again, I'm going to tell you one thing. If the SSIR is truly necessary, why was it?
It's an open challenge, Zaka. I challenge them. 10,000 people will not come with them.
Why it was not conducted after
10,000 people will not come with them. They have already been rejected by the people before the elections.
I'll leave it at that. Like I've said previously on other shows as well, ultimately I think the ball on this one, on the SIR exercise, will have to reach the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will have to give explicit directions to state governments that they have to cooperate with the Election Commission of India. Otherwise, I don't foresee how, particularly in some of these opposition ruled states, how the ECI can undertake this exercise. The court, in a previous instance, while hearing the Bihar matter, has said that this is a constitutional mechanism. Not even the court can stop the Election Commission from carrying it out. But let's see how this plays out legally and, of course, on the streets, as has been threatened by Mamata Banerjee and by Abhishek Banerjee. I want to move on to the other story that we're tracking. Russian oil shipments to India have seen a significant decline following the latest American sanctions on two of the biggest oil firms, which are Russian, Rosneft and Lukoil. It came into effect in the third week of October. The sanctions were announced by the Trump administration on the 22nd of October. They have left Indian refiners to rethink their oil sourcing strategies ahead of the November 21 deadline. Now, these new restrictions officially take effect from the 21st of November, and these sanctions, at least the primary sanctions, target American citizens or American institutions or American companies and banks, but there are also secondary oil sanctions which will affect Indian importers, Indian refiners, etc. Russian oil currently makes up about a third of India's total crude imports, about 34% or so, but analysts believe that the imports will fall further both in November and in December as the refiners reassess their supply chains. Now, we have provisional tanker data from Kepler, which is an international website which keeps a track of oil import and export data, which shows that Russian crude oil exports to India averaged around 1.1 million barrels per day in the week till October 27th. So this was the final week of October. 22nd of October is when the Trump-imposed sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil are announced. It comes into effect the next day. Prior to 22nd of October, the first 20 days of October, India was importing as much as 1.9 million barrels per day of Russian oil. This was the previous 2 weeks of October. In the month of October, India's import of Russian oil averaged around 1.6 million barrels per day. That's slightly higher than the 1.61 million that we saw in the month of September. So the share for the month, the entire month of October is almost similar to that of the month of September, which is 34%. But in the last 10 days, that is officially after the Trump administration announced the sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil, there was a substantial fall, in fact, almost a 500,000 barrels per day fall, between 1.9 million barrels per day and 1.19 million barrels per day. Russian oil is also significant for India, particularly in the global energy scenario, the geopolitical landscape. Number one, because it allows India to diversify its oil sources. It reduces its dependence, whether it's on Gulf oil, American oil, or even Latin American oil, and thereby it helps sort of profligate the risk associated with coming from just certain geographies. Two, the sanctions also make Russian oil cheaper. Now, what happened after the Russia-Ukraine war was that there was no explicit bar on selling or buying Russian oil, but there was a cap on the price. So $60 per barrel was the price cap that was put in, and that helped India significantly cut down its energy costs. India has huge growing energy demand, and therefore it requires stable supplies. Russia was able to offer that over the last 3 years since this war began. Also, India's oil trade with Russia has further strengthened its own strategic ties. Before the war began, India's import of Russian oil was about 2% or 3%. It's now gone up to 30%, and this has had a knock-on effect on other areas of the bilateral relationship as well. And five, Indian refiners are suited much more to process Russian crude oil. When it comes to American crude oil, American shale, etc., Indian refiners will have to reprogram their assembly lines, their refining processes, and it's also slightly more expensive than buying Russian oil. And therefore, all of these factors have contributed in a way to India importing Russian oil. But that seems to be now coming down slowly but surely in the aftermath of the imposition of the sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil.
In the week to October 27, crude oil exports to India from Russia averages 1.19 million barrels per day, significantly down from 1.95 million barrels per day in the previous 2 weeks. Russian oil dispatches to India have dropped sharply after the US announced sanctions on Moscow's oil giants Rosneft and Lukoil on October 22nd, according to provisional tanker data. Refiners seem wary of Washington's latest sanctions, which are set to take effect from November 21st, where on one end, oil refiners have agreed to abide by Western sanctions. On the other end, Indian government says that its priority is to safeguard the interest of the Indian consumer in a volatile energy scenario.
Voters in New York City are taking to the polls today. They are going to elect a new mayor. 3 candidates are vying for control of the largest city and the richest city in the United States: Curtis Silva, Zohran Mamdani, and Andrew Cuomo. Now, opinion polls show the Democratic socialist Zohran Mamdani holding a clear lead, in fact, a double-digit lead over the rest of the candidates. The closest seems to be Andrew Cuomo, who's the former New York governor. The question, though, is Donald Trump did give a late endorsement to Andrew Cuomo, but will that clinch the mayoral election in his favor? Mamdani, like I said, is currently leading by double digits. And what does a Mamdani win mean for New York City's future with Donald Trump? After all, New York is Trump's hometown.
People can afford a decent lifestyle in this state.
Andrew, you didn't leave, you fled.
It is knowledge that is a betrayal of everything that we stand for as New Yorkers.
US President Donald Trump has strongly suggested that he would prefer Andrew Cuomo, the former New York governor, to win the New York City mayor's race. He has mocked Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee and the frontrunner, calling him a little communist. And finally, on Monday evening, just hours before Election Day, Trump made it official. He endorsed Andrew Cuomo over Zohran Mamdani in the race to be New York City's next mayor.
We have a communist who's 33 years old, doesn't know a damn thing. Practically, he's never worked a day in his life. And he sort of caught on, right? And I'm not going to send a lot of money to New York. I don't have to. You know, the money comes all through the White House. And if they're going to be sending us stupid policies, I mean, communist policies, which is proven for thousands of years doesn't work. You know, we don't have to prove it again. We're not going to ruin one of our great cities because we'll make that great.
As he's done in the past, Trump has also threatened to withhold federal funds other than whatever is the very minimum required from the city if Mamdani is elected. Trump has said that he would rather see an on-the-record Democrat like Cuomo win the race rather than a communist who has zero experience in governance, in reference to Zohran Mamdani. Interestingly, he also dissed the only Republican candidate in the fray, Curtis Silva, saying that a vote for Silva is actually a vote for Mamdani. Silva has been accused of splitting the establishment vote and thereby helping the anti-establishment candidate, that is Zohran Mamdani. Mamdani, for his part, has also sought to link Cuomo to Trump throughout the campaign. He has noted that they have some of the same big money donors. Mamdani paints both Trump and Cuomo with the same brush, saying that they're backed by the same set of billionaires while he is backed by the common people of New York.
Donald Trump just put out a statement encouraging New Yorkers, saying they must vote for Andrew Cuomo. We know and have known for months that Donald Trump would favor Andrew Cuomo as the mayor. They share the same donors. They share the same small vision. They share the same sense of impunity.
But it's not just about New York City. Tuesday will also see governors' races in neighboring New Jersey and in Virginia, which abuts the capital, Washington, D.C. So in a sense, the Tuesday vote is an indicator of the national mood in two of America's biggest cities. President Trump is facing a major test of his power and his influence with the elections that will offer a sense of the voters' mood in America. But the elections are not just his only problem. If Trump continues his standoff with the Democrats, by the end of the week, he will oversee the longest and potentially the most painful government shutdown in the history of the United States. And a large majority of Americans are blaming him for the shutdown. In New Jersey, Democratic governor candidate Mikey Sherrill is leading by 6 points, and in Virginia, Democrat Abigail Spanberger is leading by over 10 points. Now, it points to a Democratic landslide in Tuesday's elections, which could be a spanner in the works for Trump. It also comes at a time when some of his key policy decisions have been challenged in the US Supreme Court. There are also on-ballot measures in California and in Pennsylvania. So the places that go to polls on Tuesday happen to be predominantly Democratic cities or states, but nonetheless, it will represent a challenge to Trump and his unfettered style of governance that America has seen in the last 9 months of his presidency. Trump has unilaterally upended many of America's long-standing policies when it comes to immigration, foreign policy, launching wars on foreign soil or even on international waters, and the most damaging of all of it, the international trade tariffs, which have set off trade wars. If he loses a bulk of these electoral fights on Tuesday in New York, in New Jersey, in Virginia, it could push Congress to put guardrails on the president. So far in his second term, the president has had a unilateral style of functioning, and that has collided with many Democrat-run cities and states. He's picked up open and public showdowns with Democratic governors like Gavin Newsom of California and J.B. Pritzker of Illinois. Trump has also sent the National Guard to predominantly Democrat-run cities like Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and Chicago. And this has brought him into the crosshairs of many of the Democratic mayors of these cities. Trump has also been taking a particular interest in governors' races both in New Jersey and in Virginia, which is seen as a forecast of what could happen in the 2026 midterm elections. The Democrats are hoping to retake the House, which is one of the two chambers of the U.S. Congress, in next year's midterm elections. And on Tuesday night, they could know if they can do just that.
All they have to do is vote to open the country.
Trump has not campaigned in person, either in Virginia or in New Jersey, but he's expected to campaign virtually in the final few hours leading up to Election Day. He's also lent considerable real estate to both of those races, New Jersey and Virginia, on his social media website, Truth Social. He's also threatened to withdraw funds from New York City, his hometown, by the way, if it elects the communist that is Zohran Mamdani. But at the end of the day, all of these elections, maybe not all as all-consuming as the presidential race, but these are what Americans call the off-year elections. But these contests on November the 4th in states like New Jersey, Virginia, Pennsylvania, they could still tell about the mood of America a hell of a lot. It could serve as a pulse check for the Democrats who are desperate to show their supporters that they have something going for them. Republicans will also check whether the 2024 gains that Trump made with young voters and Latino voters and black voters, those still hold good after the upheaval that we've seen over the past year. But most importantly, the election results Tuesday night will also send a message to President Trump of whether America approves of his startling policies of the last 9 months. Whether he's on the ballot or not, Tuesday is indeed a test of Trump. All right, I want to go straight across to Jason Carroll, who's joining us live from New York City. Jason, thanks very much for joining us. More than 700,000 New Yorkers have already voted early for the mayoral elections. That's a record high just ahead of Election Day, which is today. What does the final turnout look like, and what does this increased voter turnout mean for the leading candidates, Zohran Mamdani and Andrew Cuomo?
Well, you can take a look right behind me, Zaka, and see still a lot of voters pouring into polling sites like where we are on Manhattan's Upper West Side. In terms of what all of this turnout means, I think you're going to have all of the candidates involved. Both candidates are saying that high turnout favors their campaign. Cuomo saying that high turnout will mean better chances for him. He's currently running behind the front runner, Zohran Mamdani. Mamdani has been pushing all weekend long, like Cuomo, telling all of his voters to get out there. So I think what you're going to hear from both campaigns saying that a high voter turnout will benefit each one of their campaigns. But again, you've got to look at the recent polling. Recent polling, in fact, not just the recent polling, but the polling throughout much of this campaign shows that Zohran Mamdani still holds a double-digit lead over former Governor Andrew Cuomo. So the former governor's got a lot of ground to make up here. The question is, with high voter turnout, can he make up that double-digit deficit that he's been facing?
President Trump, of course, endorsing Andrew Cuomo just in the last day or so, just ahead of Election Day. He's also threatened that he will cut off federal funding to New York City if Mamdani were to win. How are city residents seeing this, and does his endorsement of Andrew Cuomo make a difference at all to this race?
Well, a couple of things in terms of, as you say, how city residents are looking at that. Depends upon where you fall. If you're an Andrew Cuomo supporter, you're looking at a Trump endorsement as a way of saying that, look, if Cuomo were to be elected, this is someone who could work with the president. If you look at someone who supports Mamdani, these voters, what they're telling us is a Trump endorsement just shows that he, the former governor, is locked in step with the president, and that's not what they want to see. They want to see someone who's going to break away from President Trump, challenge President Trump. And when it comes from these threats to withhold federal dollars, Mamdani said that, look, if something like this happens, he's going to challenge this in the courts. And I think a lot of Mamdani residents look at that as just a lot of Trump rhetoric. Much of this rhetoric they've seen in the past. This is the type of rhetoric that they're tired of hearing from, which is part of the reason why they're supporting Mamdani.
All right, Jason Carroll of CNN, thanks for joining us live from New York City. Thank you very much indeed. Harmanpreet Kaur etched her name in the history books after becoming the first Indian captain to lift the Women's World Cup title. India beat South Africa by over 50 runs in Mumbai on Sunday night. The championship-winning captain opens up on what it truly feels like to be a world champion. The skipper reflects on the team's journey, the pressure that she and her girls had to face, and the pride, the ultimate pride in bringing glory to the nation.
हम कहाँ जा रहे हैं आज? हम जा रहे हैं जिंदगी के कुछ ऐसे मोमेंट्स कैप्चर करने जिसका बचपन से ड्रीम देखा था. जीतने के बाद ट्रॉफी के साथ शोट, आई थिंक दैट वाज आई वाज ड्रीमिंग फॉर so many years. और आज finally that day has come and I'm super excited. मेरे लिए पर्सनली बहुत इमोशनल मोमेंट है, क्योंकि जैसे मैंने पहले भी बोला कि बचपन से ये मेरा ड्रीम था. जब से टीवी पर देखना शुरू करा है और खुद से खेलना, मतलब खुद खेलना शुरू करा है, तब से ये ड्रीम था कि एक दिन वर्ल्ड कप जीतना है. और इफ़ आई गेट अ अपॉर्चुनिटी टू लीड माई टीम, आई डोंट वांट टू मिस दिस अपॉर्चुनिटी. तो आई थिंक सारी बातें शायद बहुत दिल से बोली थी और भगवान ने एक एक करके सब सुन लिया. इट्स लाइक अ मैजिक. समझ नहीं आ रहा है कि हाउ कम, मतलब सडनली एवरीथिंग इज़ फॉलिंग इन प्लेस. सब एक एक करके हर एक चीज़ अपने आप होती रही और आज फाइनली हम वर्ल्ड चैम्पियन बन चुके हैं.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
In the Women's Cricket World Cup.
Joining us now is the woman of the moment, the player of the final of the 2025 ICC Women's World Cup and truly Destiny's Child. Shefali Verma is joining us. Shefali, thanks a lot for your time. Let me begin by asking you, how does it feel to be a world champion?
Absolutely happiest moment for all of us.
But this is truly destiny for you because आप ये वर्ल्ड कप स्क्वाड का पार्ट भी नहीं थे, आपको सेमीफाइनल से पहले स्क्वाड में ऐड किया गया और फिर आप फाइनल में प्लेयर ऑफ द मैच रहे. तो एक तरह से ये जो पूरा एक आपका जो फेट था, जो डेस्टिनी है, वो पूरी हुई.
यस, थैंक्स टू गॉड मुझे उन्होंने यहाँ भेजा एंड थैंक्स टू ऑल ऑफ देम, माय फैमिली मेंबर, एवरीवन, JSW एंड जिसने भी सपोर्ट किया इस मूवमेंट में, क्योंकि मेरा फ्रेंड सर्कल इतना अच्छा है, उन्होंने मेरे को इतना सपोर्ट दिखाया. आई थिंक वो सपोर्ट एंड भगवान ने मुझे यहाँ भेजा एंड देन टीममेट्स ने बहुत अच्छा सपोर्ट किया. दे आर वेरी वेलकमिंग, दे आर वेरी सपोर्टिव. तो आई थिंक सबकी वजह से मैंने रन किया और हम जीते.
बट जब आपको वो कॉल आया barely 2-3 days बिफोर द सेमीफाइनल, तो तब आपके दिमाग में क्या चल रहा था? क्योंकि बहुत बड़ा स्टेज है ये सेमीफाइनल में बुलाना, और सेमीफाइनल भी ऑस्ट्रेलिया के खिलाफ था.
वेल बहुत अच्छा लगा जब कॉल आया एंड मैं उस टाइम में डोमेस्टिक खेल रही थी, तो क्रिकेट के टच में तो थी, मैं मैचेस भी खेल रही थी. एंड उसके बाद मुझे यही था कि मुझे बुलाया है, इस चीज मुझे खरा उतरना. उन्होंने मुझ पे कॉन्फिडेंस दिखाया, टीममेट्स ने एंड कोच, कैप्टन, जितने पूरे स्टाफ ने मुझ पे बिलीव दिखाया, मुझे बुलाया है. तो मैंने यही कोशिश की कितनी जल्दी मैं चीज़ों को ग्रैब करूं और कितनी चीज़ों को एक्सेप्ट करूं, सिंपल रखूं और अब काम रहूं, अपने आप पे बिलीव रखूं. तो आई थिंक उसके बाद मेरे प्रैक्टिस सेशन भी थे, मैंने उस पर ज़्यादा वर्क किया. नेट सेशन में मैंने ज़्यादा प्रैक्टिस की. तो आई थिंक ये सब चीज़ें जाके एक्सेप्ट करना और चीज़ों में यूज टू होना काफ़ी डिफिकल्ट था. बट आई थिंक अगेन प्लेयर्स ने बहुत सपोर्ट किया एंड बहुत अच्छी प्रैक्टिस की मैंने उस टाइम पे. तो आई थिंक बहुत अच्छा रहा सब.
But how did you feel when you weren't picked for the squad, when there were questions on your performances? उस वक्त का जो जो टाइम था वो कैसा रहा आपके लिए?
वेल एब्सोल्युटली ये एज अ प्लेयर के लिए बहुत टफ रहता है, क्योंकि जब टीम से बाहर होते हो एंड आपको अपना बिलीव रखना, इट्स नॉट अ सिंपल थिंग. बट आई थिंक ये सब चीजें मैंने एक्सेप्ट की जब मैं टीम से बाहर हुई थी, और मैंने सब चीजों को एक्सेप्ट करके आगे बढ़ी. और मैं ये सोच रही थी कि मैं इस टाइम पे अपने आप पे क्या काम कर सकती हूँ, और उस टाइम पे मैंने अपने आप पे बहुत वर्क किया और सभी ने मुझे बहुत हेल्प किया.
But were you upset? Did you feel it was unfair that you were not part of the World Cup team?
वेल एज अ प्लेयर तो यही लगता है कि चलो मुझे क्यों नहीं लिया, बट जो भी है, जो भी हुआ, अभी मैं यहाँ पे आई और हम वर्ल्ड कप जीते, मैं उसके लिए सबसे ज्यादा खुश हूँ.
So tell me something, this entire tournament and especially in the semi-finals and final, one thing that everybody is talking about is कि इस टीम में self belief बहुत है और तभी इतनी अच्छी परफॉर्मेंसेज हुई है, और किसी एक प्लेयर की वजह से नहीं हुई. आपके जैसे और प्लेयर्स ने भी हर मैच में कोई ना कोई परफॉर्मेंस करी है. हाउ वुड यू डिस्क्राइब दिस टीम, जो सेल्फ बिलीफ की बात सारे प्लेयर्स भी कर रहे हैं और सारे एक्सपर्ट्स भी कर रहे हैं?
हाँ जी, बिल्कुल. जैसे मैंने बोला, जब मैंने ही बाकी, जैसे मैंने, मेरे 6-7 दिन हुए टीम को ज्वाइन किए, जब मैंने ही आके टीम की पॉजिटिविटी देखी तो मुझे भी बहुत खुशी मिली, क्योंकि इस टीम में स्पेशली है कि सब एक दूसरे के कंधे पे हाथ रख के बोलते चलो मैं तेरी हेल्प करूंगा. तो आई थिंक टीम में यही बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रहता है, सबको बैक करना. और ऐसा नहीं है कि हमारी 11 टीम को ही बैक मिल रहा था, जो भी बाहर थे सब एक दूसरे को हेल्प कर रहे थे, सब एक दूसरे को थैंक यू बोल रहे थे मैच के बाद कि हाँ आपके इस वजह से हम जीते. तो सबका कंट्रीब्यूट था हर एक मैच में, चाहे कोई अंदर हो चाहे बाहर हो. एंड आई थिंक सब बहुत हेल्पफुल थे. जब एक टीम में यूनिटी बहुत अच्छी थी, एक टीम में यूनिटी बहुत अच्छी होती है, तो ऑब्वियसली हम जीतते हैं. तो आज वो हुआ.
तो जब ऑस्ट्रेलिया के खिलाफ आप बैट करने आए, उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा रन्स नहीं बने, तो फाइनल से पहले क्या आप थोड़ा नर्वस थे कि अब तो एक ही मैच बचा है, आई हैव टू प्रूव माई सेल्फ एंड इट्स सच अ बिग स्टेज?
वेल एब्सोल्युटली, जब सेमीज में मुझसे रन नहीं बन पाए, एब्सोल्युटली सैड थी मैं बहुत. फिर जब हम जीते तो मैंने अपने आप को बोला कि एक और मेरे पास चांस है और मुझे ग्रैब करना है, चाहे मैं कैसे भी करूं. तो जो मेरे प्लान्स थे, जब मैं बैटिंग करने गई, वो अच्छे से एग्जीक्यूट हुए. सो आई एम सो हैप्पी कि मैंने फाइनल्स में टीम के लिए स्कोर किया.
No, but when we were watching you, आपकी इनिंग्स बहुत ही शानदार थी. You were really, bubbling with confidence and that typical Shafali Verma, demeanor on the pitch, and then आपने 2 wicket भी ले लिए, and those celebrations were absolutely amazing. Just share those moments with us while batting and while bowling.
वेल सबसे ज्यादा मैंने एंजॉय बॉलिंग में किया जब विकेट लिया, क्योंकि मैं आई हैव बोल्ड,
डोमेस्टिक में भी मैं प्रैक्टिस भी करती रहती हूँ। तो आई थिंक बॉल जब डाली और विकेट मिली, क्योंकि वो बहुत क्रूशियल पार्टनरशिप चल रही थी, उस टाइम पे विकेट मिलना बहुत खुशी और बहुत ही अलग एक्साइटमेंट थी। वो मैं बयान नहीं कर सकती शब्द में, बट बहुत अच्छा लगा। आई एम सो हैप्पी।
And can you share some of the celebrations that you had after the match? I'm sure some of them were caught on camera. वो सब हमने देखा on field जो हुआ, but उसके बाद क्या हुआ?
उसके बाद सब खुश थे, सब मैच के बारे में बात कर रहे थे और सब सोच रहे थे कि कितना वुमेन्स क्रिकेट।
Viewers, we're in that zone now in the election campaign in Bihar where some obvious questions need to be asked. Who's winning Bihar? Is the result too close to call? Will it be as tight a race as it was in 2020? We're asking these questions because campaigning for phase 1 of the Bihar elections has ended. It's ended today, and in 48 hours, polling booths will open across 122 constituencies across phase 1, and potentially a huge chunk of the 7.5 crore voters will press the button. In 2020, as the data reveals, the elections were decided by only about 12,000 voters, even though there's a disparity, as you can see, between the MGB numbers and the NDA numbers, about 8 or 9 seats between